Whenever I sit down to watch a movie, I'm sincerely hoping to like it. Doubly so if I paid to see it in the theater, and took the time and effort to actually physically get there. And I'm sure that logic applies to most of you. I mean, no one in their right mind is sitting down to watch a movie, hoping to dislike it, right? That would be a little bit strange. So when I went to see Sinners in the theater, this was a couple days before the official US premiere, I hadn't really heard much about it. But I was excited because it actually looked like a very good movie. I had heard some whispers about it involving vampires though, which I thought was intriguing, because it didn't really look like your typical vampire movie, so I was kinda wondering how that might play out. But anyway, so I get to the theater and eventually the movie starts. And it sets up this great period piece with all these great sets and characters and music, and I was honestly loving it. Loving it. Until about 40 minutes into the movie, about a third way through the runtime, when it suddenly cuts to a new character we haven't even seen before. Well, turns out this is the vampire, played by Jack O'Connell, which I genuinely had forgotten all about. I'd literally forgotten that this movie was even supposed to be involving vampires. And this is the first time we even see any real hint of them, a third way through the entire movie, which is a little bit unorthodox, I'd say. It also doesn't tell you what his character's story is at all. Like what's going on, where is he coming from, what's his deal. No clue, he just pops up chased by Native Americans for some reason, which I'm not sure is explained either, I don't think, and it feels kinda random to be honest. But alright, fine, let's see where this goes, right? And then the movie forgets about the vampires for another like 20 minutes. And now we're about an hour into the movie, and we've seen the vampires exactly twice. Not a particularly strong setup in my opinion. Yeah, they could have used some more setup and screen time in my opinion. But hey, at least the two stories converge now. They finally connect. If you can call the vampire story a story. It's honestly more like a footnote at this point. But regardless, now things are kinda developing. And we're finally gonna get to see how the vampire story relates to the story of this preacher's boy with a passion for music. And his two gangster cousins, who are sorta trying to make a name for themselves. Except that doesn't really happen. Because for the rest of the movie, basically all character development and every bit of depth and nuance is pretty much thrown out the window in favor of some pretty uninspired, generic horror schlock. Which wouldn't necessarily be the end of the world if the vampire thing felt like it in any way connected to the main story and the main characters here. But it doesn't. These two elements don't mix at all, because there was virtually no effort put into making them fit together. Now I get it, vampires, bloodsuckers, leeches, there's some sort of weak connection there to the music industry, etc. But let's be real here, Ryan Coogler didn't really put any effort into trying to properly integrate these two elements of the movie with each other. They're basically two separate pieces that are just vaguely connected. After all, why vampires? In the south of the US in the 1930s? What exactly is the connection here? It doesn't really seem to fit to me or make any sense. And why do these vampires target this particular place with these particular people? Happenstance? Just random luck? I just don't see the connections here, beyond the vague allegories. But here's the thing, it's not like the movie didn't set something good up here in the first place. In fact, it did. And I thought it did it very well. You see, Sammy, the promising young musician, is called the preacher's kid because, you guessed it, his father is a preacher. He grew up with a preacher as a father, and he grew up right next to a church. All of this plays a huge role in his upbringing, and it's emphasized well in the beginning of the movie. It's clearly shown how oppressive his father is, and how his father tries to discourage Sammy from following his passion and pursuing music. He even goes as far as to warn him about the devil, etc. I don't remember exactly the verbiage used in the movie, but the essence of it is that if Sammy abandons his father and the church, the devil will get him. Which fits in perfectly with the setting of the movie, the South in the 1930s, and it plays directly into the trope of talented musicians, especially blues musicians, having to sell their soul to the devil to make it big. It sets all of this up beautifully, only to then instead introduce us to vampires? What am I missing here? Vampires seem to me more or less unrelated to the ideas and themes the movie just set up. Instead, the movie could have introduced the devil or demons in some shape or form, if you really wanted to turn this into a genre movie. But instead you went with vampires? Why? It doesn't make any sense. You could have had a supernatural antagonist that makes perfect sense for the movie you're making, and for the themes you just spent an hour setting up. But instead you decided to go with something completely different and seemingly unrelated, that has very little, if any, connection to the themes and the overall vibes of the movie. I don't know, but that just doesn't make any sense to me. And it's just wasted potential too. And that's really why I think that fundamentally Sinners is just not a great movie. Then you also spend the second half of the movie in this bar, surrounded by vampires, and the characters quickly figure out what's going on, and that they just need to not invite them in, right? That's literally it. Just don't invite them in, and you wait until morning and you're good. And the characters know how this works. It's not like they don't. And somehow they still mess it up? It's so incredibly silly. I don't think I've ever seen a horror movie where the solution to the problem is so simple and straightforward, and the only way they could possibly mess it up is by literally inviting the enemy in. So of course this one lady eventually does it. She invites them in, when that's literally the only thing you need not to do. And I laughed out loud in the theater at that. I'm pretty sure that's not supposed to be funny, but come on, man. And I don't know, I'm not sure what exactly the entire vampire encounter was supposed to teach the characters either. Like, what are their arcs supposed to be? And what do the vampires have to do with anything? Is the lesson here that if you pursue your passion and chase a career in music, vampires might randomly show up and kill everyone you know? I mean, the allegory here is flimsy at best, because vampires just don't make any sense in this context. And do I even need to mention the heavy-handed racism is bad, don't be a racist storyline? That also has virtually no impact on anything in the entire story. But since Coogler already introduced it earlier in the movie, he then has to shoehorn in a final confrontation into the end as well. I don't know, what was the point of that? Like, genuinely. It just felt like some sort of Tarantino light-esque revenge porn sequence. Except it was just sort of tacked on to the end there. But yeah, anyway, I thought the movie started off great and I was loving it. And then it turned into a vampire movie for no particularly good reason, when it could have easily played into the tropes and ideas it already set up instead, with the church and religious themes and the preacher. And I also just didn't find the second half to be particularly entertaining or engaging either. But I feel like that's a little bit more subjective, and not really my main issue with the movie. But yeah, I'm sure this is gonna be a very popular take, and not at all controversial. But hey, if you agree with me, make sure to drop a like and a comment below. And if you strongly disagree, be sure to dislike and tell me how wrong I am, and how I just don't understand the unparalleled genius of Ryan Coogler. But yeah, I think that's about it for today, and see you next time.